Thank you all to the Pyohio organizers for making such an awesome conference that I was at. I was at the very first one when Catherine did it in Columbus at the library there, and so I've been a fan ever since. Now I want to talk to you all about something even more near and dear to my heart, which is deployment. Who here loves deploying software? It's like your favorite part of the job. Oh, I know. I got one, two. Okay, and a tentative, pensive hand over there. It's not always the thing we love doing, but it's the thing that has to happen for us to deliver what we actually produce as value, which is our code. So specifically, I'm going to talk about deploying Django, because that's a lot of work we do. And so it might serve as a good blueprint for some techniques and tricks and ways that you can actually deploy your own software using Kubernetes and GitOps. And I even put the word easy in there. That's a word I've been trying to strike from my vocabulary normally, that and like simple and things like that. But I do feel like what we've put together tries to make this as push button as possible. All the slides are actually available on GitHub. There's a GitHub link, so if you just go to the 6feetup.org on GitHub, it should be like one of the first repositories listed right there, or that QR code takes you to exactly that link. It's nothing nefarious, I swear. It's just a link to that page right there. And you can learn more about this. You can follow along, have the slides, and all the things I'm going to show, because one of the things I love doing as part of giving talks is demos. If I don't get to give a demo, there's no point in me being up here. So we're going to kick off actually with the demo, because part of my demo takes about 5 to 10 minutes in the background to run, and I don't want to I want to make sure we get through all that. So what we're going to do first actually is kick off with our demo. And so, whoops. What we're going to do is we're going to deploy some software today. We're going to go from nothing on the file system to a full GitOps workflow deploying to AWS cloud in Kubernetes setup here. All the way from, we're going to actually create the repository here. So create, we're going to call it 6feetup. And I've deployed probably 40 Kubernetes clusters over the last 2 days, so you don't have to, because I'm testing a lot. All right, so this is obviously iteration number 17. Oh, I forgot the public tag. Public. And if you wanted to follow along, you can also see that repository. But we're going to use a tool that we developed at 6feetup open source called SCAF, and I'll talk more about that as well. And we're just going to make a new project, and we're going to use our full stack template. We're going to name it simply that, and then we use this copy under the covers. And so this, last year at this time, I gave a talk about SCAF and the developer experience. This is the other half of that talk, which is the deployment experience. We really have focused on making an integrated developer experience that is easy and fun to use, and so that folks can have a sane environment for working together. So right now I'm just filling out some questions. This is like where I want my site to actually be deployed to. So when we're done, the goal would be that we can actually go to a URL that has certificates and the whole bit all set up, and it should work. And we're going to deploy it into US East. I actually have the ID of my account right there. We're going to put an XJS front end on it. We have a choice between K3s and Talos Linux, which are two different distributions of Kubernetes available to us. We're not going to use Celery in that. One last bit I need to change is make sure that this goes into the 6feetup.org. And bang. So behind the scenes, this has actually started a brand new fresh project on our file system. I had nothing on my disk at all. And then it's going to put all the bits we need in the right places and give us that developer experience. What I'm going to do is stall a little bit right now while it does this, because I want to actually kick off the deploy of this into Amazon, which means I have to have code in a GitHub repository, and I have to have a CI pipeline running in there to make this all kind of magically come together. There we go. So right now it's actually going and pinning all of our dependencies. One thing we want to make sure as developers is we're always pinning all of our dependencies, and that whether they're Python dependencies or Node dependencies, or later on I'll show you even the Nix dependencies we use for command line tools as part of our developer workflow. We actually pin those as well to make sure that the experience today is the same experience I would get 6 months from now or 18 months from now when I come back to this project after a hiatus, and I want it all to still work and actually be productive and develop. That's one of the problems we really tried to solve with the SCAF package that we put out there as a way to get started with your projects. While that's actually running, I will come back over here real quick. So the other question you may be asking is like, well, what even is GitOps? I mean, it's an operating model for you to deploy software in a way that is repeatable, reproducible. It provides you with that single source of truth. All of the bits that get deployed only happen because they went into your Git repository in some way or fashion. Like there's no ClickOps or command line cowboy going on here. Everything that gets deployed comes out of a single source of truth. It's all declarative, which means that you describe what you want to have, not how you want to do it. So you basically shape your world, tell it what you want it to look like, and then it goes off and does this for you. It's one of the tenets of being in the GitOps model. The automated reconciliation means that the system is continuously ensuring that the state of your deployment matches what it's supposed to. So if something in the state changes, the system will deploy those changes. If something in the deployed state changes in an adverse function way because someone maybe manually went in and did something, it can actually go in and actively fix that for you too. It uses poll-based deployments. You're no longer from your own laptop running kubectl apply from your own machines, because that's obviously dangerous and untrackable and you don't know who did what. This sits and watches your repository or looks for polls coming in from the CI pipeline and deploys it for you on your behalf. So you now know it's been deployed correctly. Another bonus bit is you really get a good documentation of your infrastructure because you've defined what you want. It's all in Terraform code and Kubernetes manifests. You know what the code for the infrastructure looks like. So it's basically a documentation as code for your infrastructure and your application itself. All right, let's look real quick over here. Oh yeah, so we now have a project on our file system, Pyohio 17. Heading back into demo land here. We use dirinv, and this is kind of part of making sure everyone's environments all line up and have the right things. But one of the pieces we're using right here is a system called Nix. If you've not checked out Nix, that's a whole talk on its own. But Nix makes sure that I have the same versions of the binaries that Frank has and that Maxime has, and we're not like running into weird edge cases where you're using a version of sed that is from someplace else that doesn't have the same command line flags as my version of core util sed that was on my Linux box. And what that does next, though, is it does change our file system and puts in a lock file for that. So we're going to check in that file real quick. Oops. Flake lock. And now everyone who polls this project will get exactly the same versions I have on my machine right now of those things. And then you can move them forward just like you would with any other part of your dependency chain process. So we now got our thing here. I'm going to actually do a git checkout. We're going to check out a develop branch because we're releasing the sandbox. I don't want to release to production. I've got kind of my GitOps pipeline set up so that anything going on the develop branch, like if you did a pull request and it merges into develop, it should release automatically into that sandbox. So we're in sandbox right now. I'm going to do a git push of this to develop. And I use another cool trick there. 1Password has an SSH agent. So all of my SSH keys are actually in 1Password and not on my file system. So no private keys, no private secrets on my machine anywhere. Another tenet we try to really strictly follow as we do the SCAF stuff too. You'll notice I don't have any secrets anywhere on my machine or in the GitHub other than if they've been encrypted. We do use sealed secrets for that. Okay, so that pushed over to GitHub. So actually we can go look at that right now. Whoops. Oh, this monitor resolution is going to mess with me. Here we go. We should see a Pyohio 17. Here we go. And that kicked off GitHub Actions. It's actually in the background building right now some containers that are going to deploy. It's going to fail. It doesn't have any infrastructure to put it into right now. So the next step is actually going to be to go in here and we're going to deploy. We're using task files to deploy. So we're going to do deploy. Oh, wait, one more thing. I've done a couple demos. I want to make sure my kubectl kubeconf is not set. Perfect, it's not. And I want to make sure that's set. There's a very dangerous mode in here I just enabled. Don't do this at home, but for the sake of the demo, it's okay. It's all gonna be fine. Okay, now we're gonna deploy our sandbox. Deploy sandbox. This is actually going to set up a security group for the IP address of where I'm sitting right now. So only I can access this, well, and you all on the public Wi-Fi who are in this building can access this. And it's going to take Terraform and start building out the infrastructure in AWS for all the infrastructure pieces we need to make this all the magic happen. While that's going, we'll go back into the magic land over here and continue the presentation. Okay. So why GitOps then for Django itself? Because you are deploying an application, you may have the needs where you want to be able to roll back. If an error or a bug creeps into production, you'd want to be able to have that quick feedback and rollback. Tools like GitOps, like Argo CD, which I'm going to show, or Flux CD and other CD type tools, give you this quick rollback feature. You basically can go typically through a web UI and even push a button and say rollback, or you can roll forward, which is kind of my preferred stance is fix the bug quickly. Small little atomic changes that are rolled forward are actually a better approach because now you can get back on track and continue to be releasing new features and maintain that velocity. One of the things you get with GitOps is going to be environment drift protection. I mentioned this a little bit, but dev, staging, and production, as you create new settings or new environment variables, things like that, those are the typical things that developers forget to put onto the next environment. You're developing a new feature, you've implemented some new environment variable as part of that feature, you forgot to put it on sandbox. And when we need to go to deploy to production, you forgot to put it in production, and now things broke because you forgot to have that environment variable there. Well, these tools actually help you set up kind of base within the layers that can go on top of it so that I define the environment variable for everybody up front, and then I customize it, literally using a tool called Customize for the various specific environments. So you can now have least privilege and you can have environments that are set up specifically for production, so developers don't have production access, but they do have access to sandbox. These are the kind of things that are enabled. That security, no CI/CD needs cluster credentials. The way we're using our CI/CD is we have our tool pull our GitHub for new changes instead of having more credentials kind of out in the wild in various places. The CI pipeline we've deployed has no credentials in it at all. It builds images, and because of the OAuth connection with like GitHub and Amazon, we can push into ECR with roles instead of having credentials. It's just much cleaner and a lot less to worry about. And then compliance. With GitOps, you have a full audit trail of who has done what, when, and where, because it's all in Git. You know who pushed a change, you know when it built, what image had that change in it, and when it went out the door, and when it got deployed into a specific environment, more importantly too. You also can control, I mentioned this with the environments, you also get to control who has access to the kube config. So if you only want, again, developers to have access to the sandbox environment, they don't have, there's a different kube config than there is for production environment. So now you can have people who are more in the operational responsibility and accountability, knowing that their stuff can't be messed with by kind of rogue developers, meddling when they shouldn't be. I know they're trying to help, but sometimes their help may not be wanted. But people ask me this often is, why Kubernetes for Django? My number one reason I like about Kubernetes is the control plane. It gives me that ability to orchestrate it and automate it with an API. There's an endpoint that gives me that control from other systems that now can talk to it. These other reasons are all awesome as well. Obviously, you get the whole orchestration and scaling bit. The zero downtime deployments is a nice bonus. It will scale down, or it'll scale up new pods as it does releases with your code on it, keeping the old ones in place until it's moved all the traffic over to the new ones, and then it goes ahead and shuts down the old ones. It's really nice that that's just an out-of-the-box thing you get. You get the self-healing. If containers fail for some reason, or if a node fails for some reason, Kubernetes is watching for all those things and bringing them back up for you on demand. Service discovery is also nice. You can just point at the database, like the Postgres, the Redis, the Celery, or whatever the things may be, and those names are automatically hooked up inside the cluster and discoverable. Secrets management, out of the box you get sealed secrets, which means you can check secrets into GitHub, and they're tied to a specific environment, and they're encrypted at rest and in the repository, and they only apply to, say, the sandbox environment. The sealed secrets that work on sandbox don't work on production. So again, you get nice kind of secrets management. There are better ways to do that, but that's a good default, like a sane starting place for that. I already mentioned control plane. I love the deploy story. It matches our developer environments. So not only did I just spin up a Kubernetes cluster in Amazon, I've also spun up a Kubernetes cluster on my local machine. So I've actually got 2 clusters I've spun up here in real time with you all. Actually, let's check in on how's it going over there. Oh yeah, this is the long part. Spinning up CloudFront distributions. I've got a whole architecture diagram and talk that goes over everything that's in there. This will take another 2 minutes, so we'll be back in 2 minutes for that. All right, and then another reason for Kubernetes is you now have a cloud agnostic way of deploying. Whether you want to use, this is a demo done on Amazon and AWS, but this will work on Azure. It can work in any managed Kubernetes clusters. It can work on your bare metal. So if you want to be in Hetzner or some other like really inexpensive provider, this gives you the ability to move things around and everything still works the same way, generally. You got little add-ons around the edges, like for example, we're using Amazon's ECR for our container registry, but you could just as easily be using Docker Hub. You could just as easily be using Cloudflare instead of CloudFront on AWS. So there's some pieces you can swap in and out, but it's nice is that you've got a base where you can now do that. You can actually plug and play pieces from one to the other and have Terraform and Kubernetes orchestrate it all for you. And then the magic behind the GitOps part of this actually is Argo CD for us. There's a couple of great open source GitOps platforms. We chose Argo. It has a nice, really slick UI, which makes it kind of attractive for people who are not in the GitOps or DevOps world as much. But it is Kubernetes native continuous delivery. The Argo CD runs in the cluster for us in this case. So we're running it in Sandbox, we'll be running it in staging and running it in production. And each of those are responsible for their various deployment environments. So we're deploying Kubernetes or Argo CD into Kubernetes. It's polling our GitHub repository. It has a webhook mode, but we're using the polling option for that. And then it synchronizes automatically on demand. When the manifests update and there's new revisions that are tagged for the Sandbox environment, it knows it's got to go into action and deploy those pods onto your system. It's basically a powerful wrapper around the kubectl command. Anything you do with kubectl on your local machine, Argo can now do for you in an automated and controlled fashion, and it's again all auditable. And it does support other extensions like Helm, Customize, and Plain YAML. Actually, we're using all of those features today in this demo behind the scenes. And I mentioned this a couple times now. It's all enabled through our SCAF tool. We basically wanted to have day 0 GitOps. We didn't want to bolt GitOps onto it afterward. We don't want to bolt deployment in as an afterthought. We wanted to start with the end in mind so that everything should just flow nicely. Like day 1 of the project experience should have something live on the internet that you can click and navigate to and see if it's like a web application, for example. It is battle tested. This is something I started back probably in 2008 as a Django template, pre-Kubernetes, pre-all these other things. I didn't start doing more container type work until about 2021, 2020 timeframe. And then I really started getting more invested in this ecosystem of how do we simplify and take the hands off the keyboard and turn this more into a developer experience where I get to do just the pieces I want to do, that cognitive load reduction of focusing on building software and not worrying about deployment, but having all the deployment follow best practices is what I really, really wanted. Another side effect of this is choosing the right kind of tools. We chose Talos Linux for our production level Kubernetes distribution because of the mutability of it. When you deploy a Talos Linux virtual machine on Amazon or any other platform, it's also cross-platform, it doesn't even have an SSH shell. You can't shell into it and fiddle. It has a Talos CTL for doing updates and things, and you've got kubectl for doing things with your cluster and your application, but it is a secure platform that is immutable by default. You can't change files on it. The containers, again, following that stateless, informal way of doing things. This is basically the magic. This is best practices out of the box for that, solving that kind of blank page problem. How do I get started? This is a great way to get started. All right, let's see where things are right now. I don't know why I keep wanting to take me over there. Here we go. Ah, sweet. Okay, so CloudFront's done. Which means we're getting close to the Kubernetes bits all starting. All that's happened so far is infrastructure via Terraform using OpenTofu is being created over in Amazon. There you can see the secrets that we output from the Terraform run that then will be combined into a sealed secrets here in a moment. It's installing an ECR credential provider so that it can pull images from ECR very easily. And right now it's installing K3s. So I mentioned Talos Linux. That's one of our preferred production Linux distributions for Kubernetes. For sandbox instances, for local running stuff, you probably want something a little more lightweight. And K3s is a very lightweight, single node distribution of Kubernetes that is perfect for a use case like this, where I've just got a single EC2 instance running, and that's what is actually happening right here. Now the actual Helm chart is being used for Argo CD, getting that installed, and it should be up. This will take a hot minute before it'll be ready to go, but I'll come right back to that. So I think things are definitely easier to describe when you've got a picture in front of you. This is generally the overview of the experience I've been trying to lead up to, is that the developers themselves code on their local machines. They're using Kubernetes locally. We use Kind as a Kubernetes distribution on our local machine. Ends up ultimately in a pull request, and that pull request could be reviewed, and then once it's merged into the develop framework or develop branch, you now have something that can be released. So you can see here the GitHub flow on the top, which is like basically a GitHub repository that runs the GitHub actions for CI. Those are responsible for building images that go into AWS ECR. The Argo controller in the cluster is now watching for those images to be built, and when they are, it goes into action and deploys your app. That's all this is probably like a month of DevOpsy things rolled into, it happens in about 5 minutes type time savings. So it's legitimately that nice of a system for you to use. All right, I don't want to keep going to that. Okay, sealed secrets are coming up. I'm going to go into this directory here. And what's nice is if you're a developer on your local machine and you want to interact with the sandbox, let's just go get our kube config. You just have a kube config for your sandbox in the repository ready to go for developers. I can now look for things like certificates, for example. So the system hasn't gotten any TLS certificates from Certificate Manager yet, so I can't actually go to the web UI for Argo, but it will be there soon. So as soon as those show up, we'll be able to go to Argo and then kind of start showing you a little bit of a tour of Argo CD itself. Hopefully if it happens in the next 5 minutes or so here, which it should. Keep fingers crossed. This was running a little slow for me this morning. So for example, using kubectl, again, I am not a Kubernetes expert. There are people in the room who know way more about Kubernetes than I actually do. But for example, we can look at the things that have been deployed currently. There we go. All the Argo CD stuff's up. The sealed secrets controller is not up yet, so you can see the Argo stuff at the top. It's gone off and put together all the magic, the stuff I don't know how to necessarily do myself, but it does for me, which is really nice. We should see sealed secrets coming in here real soon. And once we do, then I'll be able to actually get to what we were talking about earlier. Let me see if there's certificates. Nope, no certificates yet. That'll take a hot second. All right, we'll come right back to that. Okay. I mentioned that, again, part of our workflow involves Nix. I wanted to have a little sub thing in here. The issue we had 2 days ago, literally, was all the developers who were working on this scaffolding project were all using Linux laptops, and everything worked great on their laptops. I am on my Mac OS, Apple Silicon laptop. I went to pull it out, and nothing worked. It would bomb out like every step of the way. Ultimately, what it was a few command line tools we were leveraging in some of the scripts had different flags from Mac OS to GNU Linux. So using Nix allows me to get the core utilities versions of those same exact utilities over on my side, so I don't run into these kinds of stumbling blocks. If you haven't checked out Nix, I highly recommend it, just from a standpoint of the works on my machine thing is really painful. You don't want to spend days spinning your wheels just because you had the wrong version of SED or TR or base 64. You would think the base 64 command line tool would not bomb out, but there's literally a flag on Linux for wrapping or not, and on Mac OS, the default is to wrap. And you don't need the flag, and there is no flag. It doesn't exist. Helping another developer shouldn't be hard, and that's what we're trying to solve for here. So if you are in a team and you're collaborating with other people, this is a really nice feature to have for you. Some new things we also added over the last 2 days. For a while, we were pretty coupled into 1Password. We were storing the deploy keys there and a lot of our secrets there. Not a bad thing, but from a simplicity and eliminating some extra tools around the edges, we decoupled from 1Password. Sealed secrets still happens. We're also using SSM parameter store in Amazon to store things like the deploy key. And then we put the deploy key into GitHub. And then now Argo will have access to the deploy key on demand via that secrets management in Amazon. So again, the cluster itself doesn't maintain the secrets. An outside secrets management tool is doing that for us. I mentioned a dangerous mode. As long as you don't know what that magic environment variable is, you don't have to worry about it. But if you did want to turn it on, you could. We did automate sealed secrets creation. That's actually what's happening right now on here. If we go back up to this, it's still waiting for it. So it's actually, this part was pretty manual before, where we'd like pull the secrets, create the secrets, push the secrets. We managed to get that all pretty automated. It does take a little time, unfortunately. And then you can now tear down an environment. If I just go in here and type task tear down sandbox, it's going to go through and run the Terraform to undeploy all the infrastructure, so I can stop paying Amazon per minute for all the stuff that I've just deployed. We added in some GitHub automation as well. So part of this process is actually push some variables into the GitHub repository when I push the code up there. And then we updated Argo CD to the latest. The traditional deployment before this was, you SSH'd into servers. If I never have to SSH into another server again, I'll probably be a pretty happy person. It makes me happy to see all this, kind of Rube Goldberg of mechanics going on behind the scenes, saving me a ton of time. There's no more manual Docker Compose up, so even if you are using containers, but you're still using something like Compose for deployment, you're still having to do manual steps. We try to eliminate the works for me bit. Deployment should not be anxiety. That's another piece we're fixing for as well. And we want to know who did what and how do we get back to it. This is the post-GitHub's GitOps world, which is a Git push should result in a deploy if you're in the right branches. It's automated and consistent. It should work everywhere. Should provide confidence, and everyone should be able to do this. If you want to get started today, I'll have some links in the presentation for SCAF. It's a one-line install. You'll be able to type like I did, SCAF my project. It'll build a Django application on your local system, and then log into the AWS CLI, it'll be able to do all the rest of the pieces. You'll be able to edit things and watch the magic happen and deploy. You don't need to be a Kubernetes expert. You don't need complicated CI/CD pipeline. You have one main pipeline building images. It's not very big. And you don't need a huge team. This should not be too onerous on you. Oh boy. Come on. Actually, work here. Oops, I think it's different. There it is. Okay, that's the part I really want to see. We may still make the demo happen by the end of the talk. So watch us for that pod to be created. We saw at the very bottom that sealed secrets right there. Once it's ready, it's going to push the sealed secrets from my environment into it. And now Argo CD will have the ability to do the rest of its magic, which is actually right here. There, push the secrets into the GitHub repository, which is triggering the next build. Which is the key bit of this right here. Go back over into our repository. There it is. That sealed secrets just got uploaded and it's picked off the latest build. We now go into Argo. And every one of the services has a public URL. We're actually managing the DNS node inside of Amazon for us. That's not ready yet. No, that's why I'm waiting for the certificates to be made. Once the certificates are made, every cross your fingers. Maybe it's the wrong thing. Once the certificates are in place, I'll be able to get to the Argo UI. Actually, while we're waiting, I think we're going to get the Argo password. The Argo password, when you install Argo CD, there'll be a kubectl command right here that you can run to get to your Argo password. And you just make sure you export it out of kubectl config. And I can run that. And that's the password for Argo. True. Okay. That's a good sign. Bingo. You did that. So we are now logged in to Argo CD. It has a root application, and it also has all the little pieces that are getting deployed right here. Sandbox. Can you all read that stuff? Okay. Here we go. This is waiting for the what we just committed into GitHub. When those images, as soon as those images get built over on the GitHub Actions side, they're going to push over into ECR, and the manifest will update, and this error will go away. There it is. So you can now see all the components of our application lining up and going green. I won't have time to go log into all the apps, but the Django app is coming out, the Redis is coming out, the database is all coming out. Like everything now is basically becoming live. And when this app call gets to green, you can go log into your Django app. This is all, again, running in Kubernetes on Amazon, hooked into my repositories. If I make a code change locally now and commit, it will now deploy. It takes about a minute or so. But I don't have to, I can sit back as a developer and focus on just my code, which is exactly what I want to do as a developer. And last thing, there's links in the presentation, and I am not 100% fine. Please talk to me. I love chatting about this kind of stuff. Thank you all so much. Yeah, and I'll be honest, I'm 1 minute over. You did great.